You know, we hear about pornography and the addictions that many men go through, but you won't believe the actual facts of it. Today, Dr. Mark Laaser, live here on The View from a Pew, on The Truth 99.3.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 244-0077. That's 244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, welcome 4 minutes after the hour on this, the 5th day of August in the Lord's year 2015. It just flashed through my mind. This show is undated, untimely, so you may be hearing this as a best of at some other time. And I'm hoping that today is not the only day that Dr. Mark Laaser joins us. He is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He is a PhD, and he's an MDiv/PhD. Now, you're the smartest one in the room here, Bob. What does that mean, an MDiv? Is that a Master of Divinity?
Yeah.
I guess I could ask him. Mark, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
Is that a Master of Divinity and then a PhD?
Well, yes, and given where you're originating from, I would like it to be known that PhD is from the University of Iowa.
Well, and we're very appreciative of you coming down and being a part of that great university. And now, you have
I'm married an Iowa State graduate. So
I was going to say, and you've got grandchildren right here in central Iowa.
Yeah, in Ames.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. All
right. Dr. Mark is going to be with us for about half the show today. Late last night, I got a phone call, and Tom Coates and I were given the opportunity to interview Governor Rick Perry this morning. This just hours after it was announced that he wouldn't be a part of the big shoe tomorrow night. And so that very short 18-minute interview will play back at 2:35 this afternoon until the top of the hour. And so Mark and I have already discussed this, although we don't have a date picked. But I'd like to see Mark come back about every 3 or 4 weeks because I'm fascinated by people and the addiction to pornography. Now, why am I fascinated? I'm an addict. I mean, I have 1920 days that I haven't put a drink to my lips. And if you hear me say that with pride, maybe a little, I guess I feel good when other people tell me good job, especially when somebody says good job to me, and they've had somebody in their family who either has not chosen to put the plug in the jug, or they have chosen. Because if you have a parent or a sibling or a spouse or anyone who suffers from an addiction, I don't know if I can explain this clearly enough to you, but the whole family has the addiction. It is one of the most crippling things, crippling tools that the accuser has to mess with families. And, Doctor, I would assume that pornography is no different.
Well, I really do think that way, Mac, that it's one of the greatest instruments of spiritual warfare that Satan is using to wage a very destructive battle against the family, the very cultural fabric of our families. So it's destroying a lot of families and a lot of individuals. There's absolutely no doubt about it.
All right, Dr. Mark Laaser is our guest. I want to give you, hey, listen, Ryan, if you could put up there underneath him the name Faithful and True, and then I'm going to give you the phone number, which is, can you write it down? Or you got it? 952-746-3880. And the website is faithfulandtrue.com. So faithful and written out true.com. Because what Mark and his wife, who is also a, I don't know what an LMFT is.
That's just a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Okay. So he and his wife have this company together, and they do workshops. And I know that you've got a couples workshop coming up in November. You've got, Frank, do you have just the male on the front workshops there coming up?
Yeah, April 16 to 18, May.
We're over April. It'd be after August.
August 20 to 22, 2015, September 17 to 19, 2015, and October 15 to 17, 2015.
All right, and so those are just for men, Doctor?
Yeah, basically, what we've been trying to do for a number of years is, put on a very intensive 3-day workshop for men who struggle with some form of infidelity, whether it's looking at pornography or men who have, gone on to have affairs or gotten involved in other things, including prostitution and that kind of stuff. But it's basically designed to help men get a lot of information about addiction, a lot of information about themselves, and, we want to kind of outline for them a program that will be successful in getting them free of all of this. And, we've seen dramatic results. If men are willing and come to us willing and repentant, then we've seen some very dramatic results.
Hey, Doctor, this is Frank the Verse, Thomas here. I'm wondering, in your estimation, how much of our 65% divorce rate in this country is related to pornography issues?
Well, I think the divorce rate is generally a symptom of the attack on the family that has existed in our culture, and pornography and sexual sin is an inherently important part of that. We were talking about this earlier today on kind of another radio show, actually, that the attack on the family has really been going on for decades. And I remember, my days down at the University of Iowa back in the mid 70s. I mean, there was just a lot of stuff going on with, free love, make love, not war. The human sexual revolution was happening. There was, other cultural dynamics that was going on in that post-Vietnam era. And I think one of the central ideas that took place was that, any concept of God's design for sexuality, which is that sex is to be the expression of the sacred covenant, the sacramental covenant between a husband and wife. And that's the only place where sex is to be expressed, is in that sacred and sacramental covenant. And it's an expression of the spiritual and emotional intimacy of a husband and wife. That all got lost, and the idea started being preached, really, that sex is for enjoyment. Everybody has a right to enjoy it. We wouldn't want to think about controlling, unwanted pregnancies by educating people about not having sex, because having sex is their inalienable right, and you don't even need to be married to a person. It's just, a friend with a benefit, or, I could go on and on with this one in terms of the cultural attitudes, but I think, the whole concept of marriage and family and fidelity has been under constant attack in our culture, and the symptoms of it are the unbelievable amounts of pornographic usage that goes on the internet, the unbelievable amounts of sexual activity among teenagers, adolescents, singles, and all of that. You can look all through our culture, all over the place, and just see examples of how that idea is being promoted. So we do know for those that have gotten lost in this, there is a way out, and that's the important thing that we try to bring to people. And we're not judgmental. If you've gotten lost in a world of sexual sin, there are ministries like ours that are there to help you get free of that.
Dr. Mark Laaser is our guest today. He runs a ministry in Minneapolis, Minnesota called Faithful and True, and we'll have that on the website, or we'll have that on our webcast. And if you want to write down the number, I will give it to you at the end of this segment. Frank?
Wasn't this intimate marriage relationship supposed to show us the intimacy that God has between himself and the church, between he and the bride?
You're exactly right, Frank, and that's Paul basically talking in Ephesians chapter 5 at the end, and by the way, I mean, we've lost an idea there. That chapter starts with the idea that we are to be imitators of God, just like dearly loved children, and we are to lead a life of love, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for the church, a living, fragrant offering. So that's how that chapter starts. Then it goes on to talk about husbands and wives, and then at the end, Paul returns to this, and he basically says, when a man leaves his home, when a woman leaves her home, they become one flesh. That's quoting Genesis. And then he says, what I'm talking about here is a great mystery, but I am talking about the relationship of Christ to the church. So there's something about the coming together of a husband and wife that is supposed to be Christ-like in nature. So if Christ is not in the relationship, and that's what I meant earlier by sacramentally, then sex is not to be expressed. That's the only way in which sex is to be expressed. And there is a mystery to this. There is a sacredness to this. There is God in this, and that's the way God designed human sexuality to be. And by the way, sex itself is not the enemy that we're against. Sex is not the enemy. Sex is good. It's our chance as husbands and wives to participate with God in co-creation of another human life. God commands us to be fruitful and multiply. Sex is good. Sex is not the enemy. The enemy is how culture would want us to use it.
Dr. Mark Laaser is my guest today. Faithful and True. That's faithful, ANDtrue.com is the website. You can look it up. And there are there are workshops coming up for both men, women, and couples who face many different problems. And we'll get into some of those other issues as several interviews go by with Dr. Laaser. But today we're focused on pornography. All right, so, Doctor, you heard in the intro that I'm a little over 5 years sober.
Yeah,
and
congratulations.
Thank you very much. And it's Jesus. It's not me at all. Yeah, I just surrendered to him, and he did the rest of the work. And I mean that. And anybody who's gone through that knows that that's a true statement. So I understand an addiction to alcohol. I love to play a competitive poker. I'm Frank, did you know that I was the Iowa poker champion?
Yes.
2 years in running? Okay,
Yes,
I just thought I'd mention that.
You have told me that.
So I don't like to play cash games. I'm not a gambler. I like to play competitive poker. But I never got addicted. Mm-hmm. I love news and information, but I know when to shut the TV off and go to bed. Mm-hmm. I honestly, and this is not a rhetorical question, I honestly don't understand the addiction to pornography when there is no sex. In other words, it's a magazine, it's a DVD, it's a website. Help me understand that.
Yeah, well, by the way, I should also mention, just for my own integrity, that like you being a recovering alcoholic, I'm a recovering sex addict. So I've been sober 28 years, by the way.
Oh, congratulations.
So, well, and it is all Jesus. It was all the Holy Spirit movement and a lot of circumstances that I had absolutely no control over. The way pornography becomes addictive is through the chemistry in our own brain. So we know, alcohol, the first time a person drinks a beer, that's going to get them buzzed. It's really going to have an effect on them. If they keep drinking one beer day after day after day over time, their brain is going to adjust. God has built an amazing ability in the brain to adjust to whatever substances we put into it. That, as you would know, Mac, is what we call neurochemical tolerance. Right. So now you're going to need 2 beers and then 5 and then 6 and, all of that. The same is true for the neurochemistry that sexual arousal produces. So you can be looking at pornography, and the brain is producing massive amounts of adrenaline, and massive amounts of dopamine.
All right, Dr. Laaser, I'm gonna stop you right here. We're gonna come back in 3 minutes, and I want to hear more about that. Dr. Mark Laaser is our guest from faithfulandtrue.com. Right.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
21 minutes after the hour of 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. Excuse me. We are very pleased to have Dr. Mark Laaser on the phone with us from Minneapolis, Minnesota. He and his lovely wife, Debbie, have a ministry called Faithful and True. Now, they are both educated in marriage counseling. Mark also has a master in divinity and a PhD. They do workshops for married couples, for women or men alone. Over the next few weeks, we're going to talk to Mark several times, and he's going to kind of lay out a lot of the stuff they do up there. If you want to check them out, it's Faithful, A-N-D, True. So faithfulandtrue.com. I will tell you that I have a very, 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 very dear friend of mine who is going through some work with Dr. Laaser, and he can't speak highly enough about him. And that's how I got connected with Dr. Laaser. Now, we have a shortened program today because coming up at 2:38, we have Perry, Governor Rick Perry, live, one of the first people he's going to talk to after being told he wasn't going to be in the debate tomorrow night. All right, so that's coming up here. And then Dr. Laaser will hopefully choose to join us over the next couple of weeks and continue to talk about this. All right, so we're talking about the addiction of pornography. And basically, just as in alcohol, there's a body-produced chemical that when naked girls show up in front of a potential porn addict, male porn addict, that those receptors open up and the brain just kind of goes crazy, very much similar to an alcoholic when alcohol hits their brain and those receptacles come open and everything goes wacky. Is that a fair 6-year-old way of explaining that?
Well, I don't think it's 6-year-old. I think it's the basic truth that the brain produces an awful lot of its own neurochemistry, adrenaline and dopamine and serotonin and some other neurochemicals that would get kind of complicated. But the idea that any time a behavior of any kind, like sexuality or sexual thought, can be addictive, it has to produce some kind of chemistry in the brain to which the brain can grow used to or tolerant to. Then the brain is going to start demanding more and more of the same substance to achieve the same effect. Adrenaline is a powerful actor in a lot of the what we call behavioral addiction. So you mentioned you're not a gambling addict, and that I get that. I'm not one either, but I do know that the people that are addicted to gambling, it's not the activity, it's the thrill of the possible win, or it's the fear of the possible loss that produces adrenaline. Well, sexual thought, even just sexual fantasy, produces adrenaline, and then this very powerful neurochemical called dopamine, which is the pleasure drug in the pleasure center of the brain. I think one of the central ideas here, Mac, is that I think even our evangelical culture has the idea somewhere out there is enough sex. So, an addict, if they're an addict, they just need to find a spouse that's willing to be sexual with them all the time. That's the solution. And it really isn't. God designed the brain in such a way that it's only supposed to be a spiritual act, a Christ-like act. And more sex in a marriage is not the solution to this problem. A deeper dependence on Christ is the solution to this problem. And that's just because of the brain chemistry. The more sex an addict gets, the more they're going to want to get. So they start looking at pornography for 15 minutes a day. Before they know it, they're going to be looking at it for hours every day.
Dr. Laaser, by the way, this is Dr. Mark Laaser from Faithful A&D True. So faithfulandtrue.com. It's a workshop for couples, men individually and women individually, on relationships and biblically centered relationships, marriage relationships. So it's not the sex, it's the dopamine that's released into the body.
Right.
Just like when I take a drink, dopamine is released into the body because that's what alcohol does to my brain. Now, do you think that's natural or is that nurturing? Is that genetic or are we taught this?
Well, I think there's parts of it that can be genetic. There are some people who are a little bit more vulnerable to it, just like you would know in terms of the field of alcoholism. There are people that have a family history of it, and they're maybe a little bit more vulnerable to it even genetically. And I think that's true with sex addiction as well. But the key element of understanding it as an addiction is that the brain adjusts to something. Now, the good news is, by the way, that Paul was right in Romans 12:2. We can transform our brain. We can purify our brain, and we can detoxify our brain in the same way that an alcoholic does. And the way to do that is to, abstain from sinful sexual activity and learn how to be sexual for the God-intended purposes of sexuality. And the brain will adjust back to that. We can shape the brain to be more Christ-centered. There's absolutely no doubt, and neuroscience has come along to even prove it to us.
All right, let me ask you a question that I'm kind of embarrassed to ask you because I would imagine I should know this, but I just don't. So I apologize.
Sure.
If a man is engaged in pornography, whatever it may be, but it doesn't include any physical, sexual acts, so it's just viewing. And obviously...
self-pleasure.
Yeah, self-pleasure. Thank you. That's a good way of putting it. Why does the wife or girlfriend or significant other feel like it's adultery? Why does it feel to them that he's cheating?
Well, first of all, I think you have to remember Jesus' words in Matthew where he talks about, you've heard that thou shalt not commit adultery, but I tell you that anyone who looks lustfully after another woman in his heart so much as commits adultery. So there's a biblical principle here at work that even looking at another woman with lust, meaning that you have some desire to be sexual with that woman, that is a form of adultery. Now, it bothers the wife because even if you say, I'm only looking at pictures of other women, you're choosing another woman over your wife. And, I think most of us, men and women, have self-image issues. We like to think that we are attractive to our spouse, and that we like to think that our spouse is exclusively attracted to us. So, it really does an emotional and spiritual number on a wife to know that even the pornography addict is choosing other women. I think it's all about the perception that this guy is choosing other women. And we're training our brain, by the way, when we're looking at pornography, to not be satisfied with our own wives. So that's the ongoing damage it does, and it leads to all kind of havoc in the marital relationship, including the sexual relationship in the marriage.
Doctor, speak to the potential that pornography is kind of, or the use of pornography is, on some people's part, a fear of intimacy.
Well, that's been one of the common dynamics that we know about. There's an awful lot of shy people out there that are not particularly socially skilled, that it's not just looking at pornography, it's also making connections for sexuality on the internet. But people who are on that, let's say, shy side or socially introverted side, they're going to be drawn into this because it feels like intimacy to them. The women that are posed in a lot of these sites are smiling at them. They're posed in such a way that they look like they want that person. So it's actually, the pornography, even in addition to creating the neurochemical response in the brain, is also kind of leading these shy people to feel like they're wanted. And that's why it's so incredibly dangerous, because it's easy to get really sucked into.
Well, speak to it in an intimate relationship where you're married and you're in fear of intimacy of your own wife.
Right, and that happens all the time. And we see couples that, Debbie and I work with couples all the time where they haven't been brought up and learned and been modeled, healthy relational skills. They don't know how to be honest and vulnerable and tell the truth and, all of those kinds of things. And they don't know how to express their needs in healthy ways. So they get into all kind of intimacy difficulties. And they can go on these websites and, find these stimulating things, feel the rush of that and the ecstasy of that. And that's why we say it's a false substitute. I call it counterfeit. It's one of the authors in our field called it false intimacy. And if we're going to develop spiritual and emotional intimacy with our spouse, we better get this stuff out of our life, because as long as we remain addicted to it, we're not going to do the things that we need to do to create the intimacy with a spouse.
Dr. Mark Laaser is our guest today. He and his bride, Debbie, have a ministry up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and you can find out all about them at faithful, A-N-D, and true.com. And there are sessions for males alone. There are sessions for females alone. There are sessions for couples. And it's not just the pornography. It's all the things. I'm looking at some of your resources, talking to kids about sex, the pornography trap, taking every thought captive, healing the wounds of sexual addiction, the 7 desires of every heart. I mean, you cover almost everything, or maybe everything, that a married couple faces. Well,
we like to, the thing that Debbie and I do that I think gives us the greatest sense of joy is to help couples heal a marriage. And not just restore it. That's a word that we've used for years in the church. We like the word transform. The average marriage that we work with, the couples have not really known deep intimacy really ever. They knew infatuation early on, otherwise they wouldn't have gotten married. But we like to teach them how to have a deeper spiritual and emotional intimacy. And a lot of the resources we produce, whether they're books or articles or these workshops or whatever, are designed to help couples find that one flesh union that the Bible talks about.
When married couples come up there and spend time with you, what's the most important thing that they need? And this might be an answer of him and her, or him or her. What do they need the most up front? You know, that first 5 minutes, 15 minutes, hour, day, weekend.
Hope.
Hope.
Well, you know, it's amazing to me, you know, Mac, that when a husband has been discovered looking at porn or having, you know, worse kind of sexually sinful behaviors, it's amazing to me how oftentimes pastors, friends, family will encourage the wife to get divorced right away. And so, you know, a lot of the couples that come up here have been really wounded, sometimes by even some of the advice givers in their life. They basically think that their marriages are over. So, you know, Debbie and I have survived my own infidelity and hopefully transformed our relationship. So I think in the first few minutes, half hour, even hour, a lot of the couples just benefit from seeing a couple like us who can relate to, you know, what they've lived through. And we're sitting there, having been married for now well over 40 years, and they can. We like to think that first session is giving them a sense of safety. Our center is safe. We're not going to judge them. We're going to try to help them, but more than that, we're going to give them hope.
Mark, I thank you for being here today. Hang on the phone. I want to talk to you about booking another guest host. Rick Perry, live with Tom Coates and I next here on The Truth.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing. We have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
Good afternoon. We continue on The View from a Pew this afternoon with a very special segment with a very special man. I have not hidden it. I've said it on the air that I think this man ought to be on our ticket on the Republican Party. I think he's a man that ought to be in the presidency or one step away from the presidency or in the cabinet. These are the kind of men, Rick Perry's the kind of man that we want in Washington. And we get a chance to talk to him today, and Tom Coates is here. And Governor Perry, welcome, and thanks for taking your time to talk to us today.
It is my great honor to be with you. Matter of fact, we'll be in Iowa day after tomorrow, so spending the weekend there. I'll see you at church.
Yeah, there you go. I'll see you at church. Here we are the day after the Republican committee decides who and who can't participate in the debate tomorrow. And I'm sad. I'm genuinely sad that you're not going to get the opportunity to do that. How can we change the system so people like you are not eliminated from the national stage in a debate like this?
Well, let's keep something in mind. This is a long game. One debate does not make the game, so to speak. And I'll be on the stage, albeit 4 hours earlier, with some pretty substantive Americans. Bobby Jindal, one of the great governors of our time, one of the most competitive governors. I had to deal with him for the last 6 years as a competing governor across the line from Texas and Louisiana. Lindsey Graham, the most knowledgeable individual on either stage of foreign policy. Carly Fiorina, who is one of the classic, powerful CEOs, thoughtful negotiator, only woman on either stage. Rick Santorum, who won the Iowa caucus 4 years ago. Two other governors in the form of Pataki and Gilmore. That stage that I'm going to have the opportunity to debate upon is going to have some very, very serious, very focused, very disciplined individuals on it. So I look forward to being on the stage with them and talking about the solutions that we face as a country.
Well, and
what happens at the 9:00 Eastern Time debate? Frankly, it's the Donald Trump show, and albeit he's brought up some important issues. I'm interested in hearing him talk about important solutions. So we've known the border's been a problem in Texas for a long, long time. I've been sending money and law enforcement and National Guard now for a serious period of time. Since back in 2007, we started sending our forces and our money down there to deal with that border. It's not like this is something that's just shown up on our radar screen. So we're going to talk about a lot of solutions. How do you secure the border? I know how to do that, Mac. I've done that, as a matter of fact. We had 74% decrease in the number of apprehensions on that border last fall because of what we did in Texas, not the federal government. And again, this is the federal government's responsibility. But I looked the president in the eye and I said, Mr. President, you don't secure that border, Texas will.
Well, and it'll be nice with today's media, the way it is. Hopefully we'll see that debate and those conversations with you and Santorum and Pataki and Jindal, and I look forward to hearing what you got to say. Tom?
Governor, it's great to speak with you. A couple weeks ago when we were doing our radio show up in Ames on that Saturday that you were there, and we just missed getting you on the show that day. I've been asked a number of times, people mistook me for you, and I actually signed an autograph on a program sitting there. And I'm not sure which of us ought to be insulted, but one of us probably should be.
I'm just glad somebody gets me confused with a great celebrity like Tom Coates.
Yes, of course. Governor, I've got a few questions we want to ask you here, and you've already touched on one. Let's go with this one. The idea of the border has been right into your wheelhouse. It is, as you say, something that's been brought up. I had a question. Do you have what we are now calling sanctuary cities in the state of Texas?
Well, they would refuse to call them sanctuary cities themselves, but the fact is they've got policies in a number of cities that allow for that type of activity to go on. In 2005 or 6, we had a Houston police officer. His name was Rodney Johnson. He was killed by an individual who had come back and forth across the border multiple times, had been convicted, deported, came back, and he ended up killing a Houston police officer. And that was the catalyst in the 2010 governor's election that Mr. Bill White was the mayor of Houston during that period of time and running against me. And we made this a major issue that Houston was a sanctuary city and that we were going to ban them. Mm-hmm. And I put it on the emergency call in 2011. Emergency call is the way a governor has to pinpoint something as this is really important. It's not going to go through the regular process. We made sanctuary cities a major issue, not only in the campaign, but in the following legislative session. It did not pass. And it did not pass because my understanding is that there were some House members that blocked it over in the House. And, you know, the fact is that should have passed. Sanctuary cities need to be, I think this is a national issue. I think this is a national security issue. You know me, I'm a big 10th Amendment guy that states need to take care of most of the issues, whether it's education, whether it's health care, whether it's transportation. But when it comes to our national security, securing the border is a federal responsibility. Standing a strong military is a federal responsibility.
All right.
And the issue of sanctuary cities, I happen to think, deals with federal national security, and Washington does need to address this, and I would address it in the following way. I would ban money going to these cities that put sanctuary protections into place. I would take what's called SCAPE money. This is the State Criminal Alien Assisted Program monies, and I would zero them out for those cities where they don't have access to those dollars, where there's a real cost to those individuals who, for whatever reason, they think it's a good idea to let people who have come into this country illegally, and particularly criminal aliens, to be protected in their cities.
Well, and I know the other night at the forum you mentioned some ways physically that you would protect the border, and I won't be redundant on that. But our liberal friends tell us that, what are you going to do, deport 11 to 20 million illegals in this country? Of course, they don't call them illegals. What would your solution be to the millions of illegal aliens that reside in our country right now?
Well, I think common sense tells you you're not going to be rounding up however many millions of people and deporting them. What you're going to do is, this is like in an accident, and someone has cut an artery, and you are bleeding to death. Well, what is happening to America today is we're bleeding to death because we got this porous border. Staunch the bleeding. Stop the flow. So that you cannot deal with the issue of immigration, illegal immigration, or, as I will suggest to you, until you secure the border. And Tom, I know how to secure this border. I mean, we've done this. It is personnel in the right places. It is strategic fencing, particularly in those metropolitan areas. And it is aviation assets flying from Tijuana to El Paso to Brownsville. You realize that's 1,933 miles. That border is vast. There's parts of it that are incredibly brutal, very, very difficult terrain to cross. And that's the reason these aviation assets become so valuable. Drones, fixed wings, rotorcraft, with the technology to look down 24/7, identify what individuals are doing along that border, and when they see clearly illegal or suspicious activity, quick response teams that can go to the site of where that activity is very quickly, interdict at that particular point in time. The border,
Governor Perry, real quick,
Mexico will be secure.
Real quick, your thoughts on what we just saw, climate change. Is it happening or is it not?
Well, I think the climate's been changing since God created the earth, but the question is not, does the climate change? Of course it changes. I mean, anybody that's spent any time in a textbook knows that the climate's changing. The question is why? And we are seeing a lot of data now that is refuting the evidence that it is man-made. We're seeing that actually data's been manipulated.
Governor Perry, I need to interrupt you.
Political agenda.
I need to interrupt you here for just a second. We're going to take a short 2-minute break, and then we'll be back with the last 8 minutes. It's Tom Coates and I here on The View from a Pew with Governor Rick Perry live here on The Truth. Yes, this is The Truth. 99.3.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I've purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
We are back, and we're going to get right to it. You're listening to The View from a Pew on 99.3. J. Michael McCoy, along with Tom Coates on the phone with us, is Governor Rick Perry, a guy who ought to be in the White House. He ought to be on the cabinet. He ought to be on the national stage. John, you started talking about these new stuff with the EPA. Rick Perry has done a tremendous job down in Texas.
Well, there's no question. And the premise that Barack Obama, I mean, it's a new outrage every day. And the premise of this is man-made, and used to call it global warming, and now since there hadn't been any satellite registered warming in 19 years, they call it climate change, whether it's too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, they can blame this on man. Now, Governor, the United States, I'm told, produces about 16% of the greenhouse gases in the world. This is something that they're teaching our kids as science. It's the in fact, they'd like to put people like you and me and Mac into some kind of a concentration camp till we get our minds right and accept the premise that man-made global warming is and climate change is actually going on. You say what, sir?
I say that you can impact the environment in a positive way without killing jobs. What this administration is doing, particularly going after coal the way they're going after coal, they're going to destroy one of the most effective ways to deliver electricity in America history. And I believe that our scientists and our universities can come up with ways to be able to use coal in a safer, more environmentally friendly way, just like we have done in the past. But here's the real issue. This president is going to put the poor individuals who can't afford electricity increases in great jeopardy. He's going to shut down any manufacturing renaissance that anyone has had an idea about in this country, dead in its tracks. He is going to send a powerful message to our great friend Canada to the north. We don't want to do business with you. I, on the other hand, believe in a North American energy strategy where we use all of the above energy sources, American natural gas, Canadian tar sands gas, Mexican natural gas, and create, there's more known reserves in North America, Canada, the United States, and Mexico than the whole of Saudi Arabia and Russia. Use that to create two things. Number one, a secure energy environment where we don't have to rely upon Venezuela or some mullah halfway around the world for our energy resources. And also, if you lower the corporate tax rate 10%, you will see an ensuing 5 to 10% increase in mid-level wages and an incentive for manufacturers to come back because we've driven down the cost of electricity. Isn't that the future that we want for this country, rather than the Barack Obama vision of, a solar panel on the top of every roof, but the economy of this country flat on its back?
Well,
those are the alternatives. That's the truth. And what we did in the state of Texas, we lowered our nitrogen oxide. Keep in mind, this is a state that grew by over 6 million people. That's
that's two Iowas.
Yes. And we also created 1.5 million jobs from the end of 2007 through the end of 2014, a time that America lost in totality 400,000 jobs. I mean, that's some powerful data. And during that same period of time, 6 million more people, that's a lot of pickup trucks. That's a lot of non-point source pollution. You have the largest chemical and oil refining capacity in America along that Gulf Coast. And, oh, by the way, the latitude of that is where it's very conducive to the production of ozone. So the left would probably tell you, yeah, boy, those Texans down there, they're spewing all of those emissions into the air. They're fouling it up. They're the biggest part of the problem. Here's the reality. Here's the fact. Nitrogen oxide levels down by 62.5%. Ozone levels down by 23%. And regardless of where you are on the whole climate change debate, CO2 levels down by 9%. The point is, you can address the issue of climate and create jobs and do it at the same time without destroying either.
Governor Rick Perry on the phone with us today here live with a view from a pew. Tom, one more question.
All right, Governor Perry, we've talked about the climate change. We've talked about the sanctuary cities. And you mentioned that Trump is perhaps going to try to turn the debates on tomorrow night into a circus. You've really been the only candidate actively engaging Donald Trump. Most of them are afraid to touch him. The problem with him is a third of the Republicans say they'll never vote for him. A third of the Republicans say they'll vote for him if he runs as a third-party candidate. The women traditionally in this country will not go for a Donald Trump candidacy. We're betwixt and between, and most of them are afraid to engage him at all. You're perhaps the only candidate that's been actively engaging Donald Trump. What do you say about this phenomenon that he represents to us right now?
What I remind people of is in 2007, actually two celebrities were at the head of our polls, Rudy Giuliani and Fred Thompson. And they were both celebrities. Now, Rudy Giuliani actually had been the mayor of a major city and did a good job. But he was a celebrity. So there's this concept of celebrity, and Americans have to ask themselves, the folks of Iowa, do you want to be entertained or do you truly want to be led with someone who has a record of getting things done? And that's, listen, I took Mr. Trump on for a couple of reasons, the least of which is not, I've worn the uniform of this country. I have dear friends that have been captured and spent time in the Hanoi Hilton. And whether he likes John McCain or not is beside the point, but he shot a bullet at John McCain. It went through John McCain, and he said that he didn't like to be around people who were captured. Well, my response to that is, Mr. Trump, why don't you look Marcus Luttrell in the face and tell him you don't like to be around him because he got captured by the Taliban. That lack of understanding, that lack of empathy for the men and women who have sacrificed, and some of them up to including their life itself, is unacceptable for me. And I'm not going to be quiet when I see somebody do that to help promote their political agenda. I consider that to be the height of hypocrisy. An individual who took 4 deferments, so he didn't have to go to Vietnam. I will suggest to you, Mr. Trump is on the stage tonight or tomorrow night in Cleveland, Ohio, because there was some young man that took his place back in the 1960s. I don't know whether that young man came home or not from Vietnam or not. But the least Donald Trump could do is to say, I am sorry if I offended any American POWs who sacrificed, in some cases, many years of their lives for our freedom.
All right, Governor Perry, we're out of time today. I hope we get a chance to talk to you again. I got just one question for you, and I'll bet you haven't been asked this one. What disciple are you most like?
I got to say that Paul, I've been on that road to Damascus before. I had that moment, and I want to say that it made me pretty vibrant in the rest of my life after that happened. I became a real disciple. I became someone who's a real believer and changed my life. So,
all right, we'll call you Rick Paul Perry. We are done. We'll talk to you tomorrow, and as I always ask you, today forgive somebody, because as you forgive, you shall be forgiven. I'll see you at church.
Brother. Godspeed.